Good morning, Rob.
Good morning, Belinda.
Today is Friday the 13th. Did you know that?
Oh, Friday the 13th. Unlucky for some.
Unlucky for some, but
Yeah.
we decided to do another podcast today and talk about something that came up yesterday with a client, choosing the right setting for the large diamond. The lady went with a 1 carat diamond, white, round, brilliant cut in a claw set. Now, I don't think a lot of people know what a claw set actually is. So
True.
maybe we should generally talk about different types of settings, the styles. And I might cut in a little demonstration of how we're setting the stone later on.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Now I have done a really fantastic drawing here in the two major settings that we work with, which is a bezel set and a claw set. And do you want to explain a little bit, since you are the very experienced manufacturing jeweler here?
Yeah, I don't know about the sketch, but that's good.
Yeah.
This illustrates the way the stone's set by drilling it into a flat piece of plate or metal, and then it's set lower than the surface of the metal, and then it's just rubbed over the edges to fold it in. Just roll it in with a.
So which type of settings are those?
This is a flush setting, and this one's a claw setting.
Yeah, or bezel setting as well.
Bezel setting as
well.
Yeah.
So when people see like a round ring of metal right around their stones, and they can't actually lift with a fingernail, they can't actually go with a fingernail underneath the stone, they can't touch the stone edge.
That's true, yeah.
It's all really smooth and flush set. While the other one, which is looks side on. Here's the ring. I'm trying to get the ring here.
It's not very round, is it?
No, it's not very round. I did it a bit in a panic.
Yeah.
And then here we have a claw that we would solder onto the cup setting here, or the bezel, bezel.
Yeah.
And the stone is actually sitting on top of the bezel. So the difference there from a cup set where it's been buried into the metal.
Yeah.
To here, it's sitting on top of the bezel, and then we actually have to drill into a 0.85 of a millimeter of a round wire to then manually fold over that wire, which becomes a claw. So it's holding it like a claw.
Yeah.
And how we are going to do this is pretty rough. It's with pliers. It's we're using pushers, so it's very manual.
The edge of the stone's actually got to be cut into the claw as well. So when it folds over, it just makes a nice, neat edge where it bends down on the stone, and that way it's difficult to get a thread or something underneath it. It's just rounded off, and it's a good way to set stones. It lets lots of light in. Whereas this method's solid, and this would be suited better for coloured stones that need a lot of light, just thrown in underneath them to light them up, whereas with a diamond like this, doesn't really matter because the light's coming from the top and reflecting out of it, so it can be solid. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. When people are finding that their ring's starting to catch on their jumpers, like a woolly jumper like this one,
Yep.
And you put it on in the morning and you left your jewellery on, your rings, and you are pulling a thread out of your jumper, that's when the thread is actually catching underneath the claw that has been pushed over. So there's a little bit of a hollow space that's created over time within the wear and tear really of a claw.
Yeah.
And it should be checked pretty much every 2 years at least minimum by a jeweler, and then just beat it down, push down.
Yeah. sometimes if a claw's catching, it's either worn or it's just been dislodged or moved by wear. Car doors are terrible things on gemstones. When you go to open them, if you look where a car door is, you can see all the scratches, and they tend to loosen diamonds and things. So if you've got a catching claw, just take it into your jeweler and they can fix it for you pretty much immediately. And it's probably at no cost too, it's just a simple thing to push down and everybody's happy again. If it's worn, it might need more attention. So might need to be replaced or something like that. So,
yeah. The other one is the pave setting that is often being used on the shanks, on the side of the ring bands. It's diamonds set really close to each other, and you have small little rounded claws holding the stones. Mostly 4, can be down to even just 2.
Yeah, that's it's an interesting way of setting. It's a lot of fun if you're a setter because it's very intricate, and you've got to mark it all out evenly and nicely.
Yeah.
And we simply just raise a grain with a graver and push it up to the stone and then beat it over with a ball, a hollow tipped point, and it pushes the claw down and makes a little bead, and can look absolutely wonderful. Pave setting can be amazing.
So pave is French for pebble stone, actually. So a pebble stone road, and it can be set very neat and tidy, but it can also be used with different size stones.
Yeah, can be, and it can be offset or in straight rows, or a lot of paving on roads in those days were sort of done in circular motions and things like that.
Yeah.
The old Roman days, they used to do them like that, and if you can set stones like that, they look really cool, It's a nice way of doing it.
Yeah.
Really good.
From the height and the thickness of the metal, so what are we talking here? So I know that the claw set in general, we're trying to aim for 0.85 millimeter within the thickness of our wires when we are setting larger stones. And the wall space, or the amount we're drilling in, it can go down to 0.4 millimeter, 0.3 millimeter before we are rubbing over the tops. But a pave set, like that little grain that we are raising, this is just a few millimeters within length is what we are actually able
to lift up,
to peel the metal, to lift that grain. And that little grain that's then been beaded, under the microscope is actually beaded. But how high would that be? Like how thick?
Well, it can vary on the size of the stone you're setting. If you're setting a very small stone, it can just be minute. But say a 1 millimeter stone, I'd suggest at least 0.4 on each side, and you can set it either with 2 or 4 or even 6 claws if you wish. So there's plenty of choices there how to go about it, depending on the style of the ring you're doing. And you can set them in curves, inside curves, all sorts of ways you can do it, and you just get some amazing effects from this technique. It can be done in rows and lines and or in sheets. One of the most amazing examples I saw was a fish scale, and the setting had been done like fish scales with rub over on one side and just one claw on the other. Looked amazing. So yeah, great way to do things.
Yeah. Channel setting. We had some repair work that we did, and we also have one ring, the gap ring, where we use channel setting.
Yeah.
I always find it's complicated to set them, and to set the last stone especially, because here we are actually cutting a groove into the metal that slots in each individual stone, and they lean on each other, so right next to each other. If there's a knock and one comes out, the other ones
slop around and
yes, because you gotta actually squash the sides down right at the end. But if you have a stone that doesn't allow for that much pressure, if it's not a sapphire, a ruby, or a diamond, you can't actually allow that much pressure.
No.
You will crack the stone. So therefore, they will just run like on a rail track. They would just go forwards, backwards, and forwards, and you can lose the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a 1 carat diamond, right? That's a lot of money. Yeah. So now you kind of know about the reflection that you want to achieve. Like all these modern cut diamonds, they allow for a lot of refraction inside the stone, so it's not too crucial if it's a cup set or like a bezel set, a rub over set, even a flush set, or a claw set. If we have something like an emerald, there can't be as easily rub set because of the softness of the stone.
Yeah.
So here we are using claw sets, but then also it allows just simply more light, as you said, more light to travel through that stone as well. Wearability. So this is the next thing. You're choosing to buy a ring that costs you maybe $6,000, right? It is a gift for someone, or you have maybe inherited a ring like that from your family, and you want to wear it. Now you want to really know, can I really wear this every day? So ideally you bring it to a jeweler, you bring it to a manufacturing jeweler to check firstly all of the settings, everything's intact, everything is tight, secure, you don't lose your stone. And then the second would be the question, can I wear it every day? When do I need to take it off?
Gardening.
Concreting.
Baking. Are you baking? Imagine squishing into dough and things and all getting stuck in your little fine detail in the ring.
Yeah, it's a pretty.
So it's really horses for courses. Like you don't wear your Gucci shoes to the cowshed. So wear your gum boots. So there's a bit of people just got to be a little bit practical here.
Common sense, really.
Common sense, yeah. And Kiwis are pretty out there kind of people. They're out in the outdoors and doing a lot of things, and it's just something that you shouldn't wear surfing or down the river or somewhere like that. I've seen a lot of rings go in rivers and into the surf. So it's just your hands get cool and the ring flies off and it's all over.
Yeah.
So, then it's an insurance claim, which is a lot of a hassle. But,
Yeah, so the whole metal does wear down. When I repair some rings, I've seen some pave sets, some of those grain sets, some of the claws, and it's worn down to just barely hanging in there. It is as thin as, I don't know, like a little...
The other thing sometimes with some of the harder metals and the like platinum and palladium and metals like that, the more, if they're pave set, the more they're worn, they sort of beat down over the stone, and you've seen those ones where the stone is actually just
covered.
Covered in metal, virtually from the way it's been beaten, and those ones are really difficult to get out if you're resetting them.
Yeah.
You've got to cut them out, basically. Yeah.
That's also why the rings, interestingly, have a hole on the other side. So when you actually have a flush set or your bezel set and you turn over your ring and you look from underneath, that's also where you accumulate all of the dirt and the baking and the baking powder.
Yeah.
This is all going to clogging up all of these little holes underneath. But that's actually the access point for us jewelers to poke in a little bit of metal to lift out your stone. So once we need to do a claw repair, or my nightmares is always the bezels. If it's a new bezel, that we're going to peel out first on the top.
Yeah.
So either with a saw or with a file, and then we need to have access from underneath. We need to poke it out.
It's not essential for setting, but sometimes you can drill right through and poke them out if you need to, but in some cases you don't have to. Like if you've got a flat surface and you're just setting stones into it, You just set them in, especially diamonds. Other stones I'd recommend be drilled right out, but especially diamonds, they get the reflection without having the light coming from behind. And on very thick settings, it's unnecessary too, because it's dark in there anyway, so you're not going to get any light, and it's just going to be a black hole going through the metal, basically.
Yeah. Castings versus handcrafted settings that we create within. Well, we're using 3D design as well, so we are casting our rings, our settings, as well as we manufacture. So we handcraft some of them. I find it's the casting of, especially claw sets, they're a bit more gooey, and they can actually, break a bit more easily, or they're just not as, or they're like too malleable nearly. They are just too soft.
Yeah, I think the metals that are used today are designed for casting too, and that they're generally a bit softer, right? Because in the casting process, if you can imagine a whole lot of metal rushing into a small space, it can make it very brittle. So, this is just
yeah. When we make the claws, it's actually pull down wire. So we actually take a little bit, and while we're pulling it, we are work hardening the metal. So straight away you have a wire, even if it's 0.7 of a millimeter, it's stronger. If I cast something in 0.7, I will always go on the larger size and try to have it even 1 millimeter within the wires that I have to cut in and then to fold over, just to give it the additional strength. Which brings me to the next question. Jewelers, manufacturing jewelers, Goldsmith, contemporary jeweler, artists, right? We have 5 categories here. When you walk down the main road, or you go to the market fair and you purchase a ring, people have an expectation how long it's gonna last, what it's gonna be, how it has been handcrafted, or where is it actually made. I always ask myself when I buy something, like, where does it come from? How has it been made? Who can, or if you have additional wishes, how can you do a change, and who can actually change the style?
Yeah. I know what you're saying, because if you liken us to the old shoemaker that used to make shoes in the village, and that was his job, to literally make shoes from scratch. And then mass production came along, and things changed, and the big companies come and mass produced everything, and the same thing happened with jewellery. But there is still a few original shoemakers and jewellers and people around that still know that and do the trade, and you pay a premium for that service, but you get a much better product than a mass-produced piece of jewellery they're made all over the world and done basically on a budget. The stones are even set in wax and then cast, so the stones are actually set in place, and then they just have to clean them up, and that's done. And so it brings the price down, but also brings the quality right down as well.
Yeah.
So it's just what it is.
Yeah. So a jeweler, then, if you are seeing a jewelry shop, it is a place where you buy jewelry that has been created somewhere else. If you have special wishes of changing the settings, they will not have a workbench on site. They will actually not be able to swap out stones, to do a repair job. They will have to send this to a manufacturing jeweler. That's the people with the apron.
Yeah.
So you actually
the real workers.
the bench workers. Yeah. And then we have the contemporary jewelers, we have the artists. So that's a different category where there is not a apprenticeship as such needed to work as a contemporary jeweler. So you create jewelry, but you don't have to go through the 4-year apprenticeship.
No,
right?
No.
You don't?
No, you can just, anybody can make jewellery. They make all sorts from little pieces of wire twisted together with stones, right through to wax casting, cuttlefish casting, all sorts of things. You know, there's a whole raft of. But the apprenticeship's what us guys did, and that's a different type of jewellery manufacturing altogether. There's not many of us around now. There's a few, but not a huge amount. Like, I think there's something like 40 or 50 jewellers in New Zealand.
Yeah, we'll fit in.
About it that have been trained and working. So, not many.
The dying breed.
Yeah. Scary.
Yeah. When I went to Austria and to Germany, and I went into the Goldsmith studios there, I found it was very interesting how similar they are to us, to our studio. Like, it seems to be everybody needs to have a weird pet as well. So here they have a weird pet or cat. Yeah. So it's like Smeagol. That's
the old cat.
Yeah, that's missed. I think we should replace. Yeah, we should replace the pet. It's a bit lonely.
No ducks or chooks or any of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. A parrot. I just thought about a parrot actually.
They're messy and they steal things. Oh, no, I think it's a good idea. You don't
want
parrots climbing all over the place.
Okay, it's just going to be us. Meanwhile,
small dog.
A small dog, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. But yeah, if you do go into any jeweler shop, a lizard
for a pet.
Okay, let's talk about this afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, go in and have a talk. They, in general, they love showing you behind their workbench and what they're doing, what they're working on, and also repair work. It's a manufacturing jeweler and Goldsmith, which are the Goldsmith. Now, this is something I was reading up the other day, and I thought that would be quite nice. In the olden days, the goldsmiths were employed by the kings and queens, and they were there to repair the crowns and the goblets and putting the rubies back into their crowns.
Yeah, you drop one of those bad boys and smashed big time. Yeah, it's interesting because in the old days in the royals, they used to have silversmiths, and they did all the silver cutlery and all the glasses and plates and goblets and then the goldsmith, he worked on the crown, and then the tinsmith worked on the armour and all that sort of thing, and everybody had a role in the metal work. But silversmiths, for example, they build things like the America's Cup and those types of sort of trophy kind of things these days.
It's repose and chasing. It's what they mostly have done. Yeah.
And they also did that with gold too. Like, I think the Melbourne Cup is made out of 18 karat gold, and it's given away each year to the winner. And that's made by a goldsmithing company.
Could you mark that down?
Yeah, you could do whatever you like with it. But I actually have had trophies that have been shared by a number of people, bought in, and they want to split it up, you know.
Oh, really?
They want their share of it out in the form of metal. So, yeah, you get all sorts of weird and wonderful requests.
Yeah, I like melting down things. It's fun. Yeah.
But, they're the sort of categories like the America's Cup, the Ranfurly Shield, those sort of things are silversmithing kind of deals.
Yeah. Engraving, it's another really dying art. Or I just remembered there was this one young girl, young lady that we taught a bit on setting stones, and she was one of the only, or she was actually the only apprentice in New Zealand finishing that year engraving and hand engraving.
Yeah.
And she worked with some beautiful things like the whetstone to actually sharpen her engravers, the little tool that I don't know where it went here, this one, and all different bits to peel off the metals, and things like oil or wintergreen and all these old ancient
formulas.
Yeah, so it is an art form. So I guess it's just going to be artists at the end being left.
This is really funny because you've got. I remember when I was a teenager doing my apprenticeship, and I used to have to do the errands in the jewellery store. So I just had to take up things to be engraved, and there was a guy up the road. His name was Alex, and I reckon he was about 90 then, but he probably wasn't. He was probably only about my age. He looked 90. Anyway, he was an old school engraver who worked for the newspapers back in the day, and they used to engrave all the plates for the headings and the scrolls on top of the newspapers.
Oh wow!
You know, all the like, if remember the old newspaper headings, you know, like the Telegraph and that, they've all got this very ornate engraved heading. That was engraved in copper, and then it was
the printing stamps.
And the press, and all those things, and then they started using letters, in the old days it was all engraved, and it was absolutely amazing, the beautiful scrolls and the shapes, and it was a real art. Yeah.
Well, on that note, let's do some art today.
Yeah, we'll do a bit of engraving. There's a bit of engraving coming my way today.
Is there?
Yep.
Oh, you need to show me. I haven't done much.
Yeah.
I don't have the 50 years of experience yet.
Well, you're getting there.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was good.
Good.
Thanks.